Hi, it's Daryl again. I'm going to have a quick look at the Auckland Light Rail proposal that came out a few days ago um, at the end of January 2022. This just shows the route of the light rail, and it goes from the Auckland CBD, which is very near the Auckland Harbour Bridge, down Dominion Road, then across to Mangere Bridge, and then down to Auckland Airport. I'm gonna critique it a little bit and tell you how much the thing's going to cost. So this is the kind of thing that they're looking at wanting to build, a surface level light rail. This is a multi-articulated kind of modern tram. The trains are about 33 meters long. They can actually be paired into two of 66 meters long, and they're proposing to put a lot of it underground, which means that the cost comes out at $14 billion for about 22 kilometres of railway, light rail. Just to put that in context, that's more than $9,000 per person who lives in Auckland. And if you look at the people who live within a 10-minute walk, that's about 800 metres or half a mile walk of any of the lines. The cost comes out to about more than $200,000 per person who would be, within walking distance of using it. So people who would use it as an alternative to their car or bus commute. And if you go by the government's desires to increase the density of the urban areas where it will run through, then it might come down to $100,000 per resident. And I've got an alternative that I'll tell you at the end of the thing, just for a complete contrast. Now the journey is 22 kilometers, and it's meant to take about half an hour or 40 minutes. This is just for historical context. These red lines are the old tramways. So there used to be electric trams in the area, and I'll show you what they look like. They used to look like that. So there were all the old cities and towns, big towns and cities in New Zealand had electric trams back in the day. Wellington and Dunedin and Auckland and Christchurch, and some other places as well. I can't remember. I think, was it Reefton? There was a little, what we consider to be a little gold town on the west coast that had electric tramways back in the day. That was one of the richest towns because it had a lot of gold there. Anyway, so the proposed route is this Mount Roskill line, and then down here past Onehunga and over the Mangere Bridge. And we'll look at that in a bit more detail shortly. I'll give you an alternative to this whole thing at the end of the video that's surprisingly cheap by comparison. There's just another view of the old map. So here's the rough route. It's about 22 kilometres. The idea is that it would go from Wynyard Quarter, which is this area, the fun downtown fashionable apartment and restaurant area. There's actually a tramway that does a loop around there, just around this harbour area for tourism mostly, I guess. And then there's the Auckland CBD with all the big office towers and stuff. That's where people go for their business meetings if they're going into the middle of the city. The Sky Tower is there in the middle, and the casino and stuff like that. Not that I'm into casinos; I think they're terrible. It goes past the Auckland University, which is just in there. Just by the way, they're building an Auckland downtown rail loop that loops around this area underneath, so that the other existing commuter trains can come in and distribute people around the central city, pick up more people, and then go back out on the suburban lines. I think if we click on that, will that show us? It's like, no, that's not going to show us. That's a shame. That would have been good if it did. Anyway, so it follows this blue line. Now, one of the important things is under Mount Eden. Mount Eden is just a lot of individual houses. And I think in the future, what they want to do is massively increase the density of the housing here. So they probably want to tear down a lot of these over the next 20 years and build townhouses and apartment buildings. Mount Eden has this main road through here, which has shops. I'm calling this area Mount Eden. It's just Dominion Road. I always used to call it Dominion Road. It's a very famous big suburban road in the middle of Auckland. Now remember, all the houses around here cost way more than $1 million each now, just to give you a bit of context. And then it would cross down here, go to Onehunga, which is where there's a lot of shops, and over here there's a lot of factories and industrial areas, Penrose. And oops, now I've clicked on something that I don't want to click on. Stop clicking on stuff. Okay, I don't know why it's doing whatever it's doing. Let's press escape. I don't know why. Okay, comes down here along the State Highway 20A and down to Mangere, and then down into the airport. Now there's a proposal, they're starting to do this, they're going to build another runway across here, because even though everybody under climate change is saying that we're going to fly less, they're actually building the airport bigger. This Auckland Airport is New Zealand's biggest international airport, and it can land the very large jets. The international terminal is here, and the domestic terminal is here, and there's a lot of, other than there being a pandemic at the moment, there would normally be a lot of flights. The interesting thing is there's a lot of industrial area in this location as well. There's a lot of factories, and there's a shopping centre and stuff there. But the main commuters actually come from Manukau. So the people that work in the airport and Mangere area mostly commute across. They come from these other suburbs here. And they come across this whatever's that 20B road, so that's the biggest flow of traffic is actually from Manukau to the airport that way. The biggest flow of traffic is not this north-south route, but the point of this is to have an airport link. Anyway, well, what does all that look like? Here's some future proposal of what the lines would look like after all the bus and train lines were completed. But this was designed a while ago, and this idea is slightly different now. The important thing, Dominion Road. I'll just show you Dominion Road. So this used to have a tramway. So this is the main crux of my video. You can see that it's a shopping road, quite a bit of it. A lot of it's suburban, but the road is wide. I think it's like 20 metre right of way, 22 yards or something. And so there's currently space for a bus lane / car parking lane, a traffic lane, a turning lane, another traffic lane, and then another parking / bus lane. Now the parking / bus lanes swap between parking lanes and bus lanes depending on when the commuter traffic is happening. But what is interesting is if we just go for a quick tour down Dominion Road, you can see what the road is like. There's a shopping centre and got some traffic islands in the middle. You have this no blocking areas for there's a lot of traffic goes up and down this road. So the tramway is going to go underground, but it won't have very many stops. So it will only have some stops in some of the shopping areas and a few of the sort of suburban areas. There's a lot of bus stops currently up and down here. They'll probably continue to keep running the buses on Dominion Road, even after the tramway was built, because you'll need the surface transport. You can see that there's some apartment or something being built there as an office building. I'm not quite sure. Let's have a look. You can see that the density is kind of going to increase. Maybe it's a building being reclad. I'm not really sure. But you can see that it's an area that you could go for higher density. If we go back to the overhead view, you can see that all this suburban houses, there's only 60,000 people that live in the walking distance to this proposed tramway. Here's some other documents that I read to learn about where the traffic goes in. So you can see that Manukau City has the most people. It says 7,500 people come across, whereas hardly anybody comes from central Auckland. Well, 3,700 people. This data is possibly 10 years old, but that's the data that they used to do the consulting for the project. This is a thing where I worked out that you need 2.75 meters of lane width for a lane of light rail. This is the actual press release of what was proposed. So it is extremely low on details, other than the $14 billion price tag. 14 billion New Zealand dollars, which works out to be about 10 billion American dollars. So that's like 10 billion American dollars for, I don't know what that is, 15, 14, 12 miles of light rail. So it's pretty dear. It will help people that are commuting around these areas quite a bit by providing a kind of a better public transport route. But just keep in mind the stops are going to be far apart. See, it says up to 2 stations in this area. Well, there's quite a big township here. And another one is along Dominion Road, up to 3 stations along Dominion Road. Dominion Road's pretty big. And so the stations there, they're going to be underground. So they're going to be underground and inflexible. You won't be able to change them later. And then eventually it goes across. And the idea is to build a light rail across where the Auckland Harbour Bridge is, either over the actual existing bridge itself or through a new tunnel or bridge or something to link to the North Shore bus lanes, which will also be converted into a light rail in time. Anyway, so that was that. But my alternative is that we should build a gondola. And I like gondolas, so I've talked about gondolas in other videos. So this is my 2 cents worth. If you did it as a gondola, it would look something like this. I kind of wish that video would play. I tried clicking on the play button. There we go. So this is the Skywalker. This was built for the Whakapapa ski field. Now the build price was amazingly cheap. It was $25 million for for 3 kilometers of gondola. And that would mean that if you were going to, instead of building this $14 billion tramway, you did it as gondolas, it would cost something around $500 million. So, I mean, it's not even a 10th of the price. It's a 20th of the price. It's such a trivial price. Gondolas have a little bit lower carrying capacity and they travel a little bit slower on average. But imagine if you came to Auckland as a tourist or on business. You arrive in Auckland and you get on a gondola, one of these modern ones that takes 10 people per car. They have, you'd have a fantastic view as you went into Auckland City, and you would be able to orient yourself in the city and see a lot of amazing sights and tourist attractions as you travelled. Now I'll just bring up one other thing. I had some other images. There we go. So they are actually using these kinds of gondolas in other cities. So this one's in South America. I forget what city it is, but they use it, and the ticket price is $1, like a New Zealand dollar per journey, per ride, and so you can see, like, you can put it in the middle of the city, you can put it on high towers. All these towers, they come as kind of Meccano, and you just put them together. So you build a big concrete foundation, and then build the Meccano tower, then string up the lines, and it's actually incredibly cheap to install and pretty cheap to run. It's not great on windy days. Auckland would have a few windy days per year where you'd have to shut it down if it got too windy, because it's just not comfortable or safe to ride in at that stage. But this is just an idea for an alternative. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. And Doppelmayr, which is a company that makes makes these things, they propose it as being part of a multimodal traffic system, which is what this diagram is supposed to show. This happens to be in German, apparently. Yeah, but yeah, cable cars can be used for public transport, and they are used for public transport in some places. But it just gives you an idea of an alternative. Yeah, I just think it's extremely expensive, and it's extremely expensive per person who would be within walking distance to travel on it, which is kind of just a bit of a shame. Anyway, I'm sure there'll be a taxpayer bailout. Don't worry about it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. That's just my initial thoughts on the tramway. They're going to do all the consulting and everything coming up, and hopefully they'll come up with some good ideas of how to make it a little bit cheaper and make it a bit more pragmatic. Have a nice day. Catch you later.